Hello and welcome to the ThePreGameNetwork News Hole, a series where we recap a few things we heard throughout the weeks. Not necessarily everything and all the big news you'd expect, but a few things we heard and thought were interesting. This episode is covering a few stories you may have missed from the month of March 2024, a somewhat controversial month that had some exciting reveals. Let's get started. The fighting game genre and community was hit by a 1-2 punch of content during the month. After years of waiting and teasing, Garroux's sequel, Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves, finally got a proper gameplay reveal, as well as the reveal of a handful of new and returning characters. Meanwhile, Guilty Gear Strive saw the return of the character Abba, while it also teased its final Season 3 character and announced that a 4th season of content was in development. Naturally, this turned into an argument about transgender representation in both games. While many were thrilled to finally see Fatal Fury in action with new mechanics and a new style, the usual online activist types were quick to hone in on the character Preacha, whose name is traditionally masculine and who has hair colored similarly to a certain flag. This very quickly led to declarations about her identity, which then led to fighting between two sides as the situation was intentionally muddled to make anyone complaining about this brave but yet to be confirmed representation, or the unwarranted following it was building, an evil bigot who was never a fan of Fatal Fury, Garroux, or any SNK game for that matter. Meanwhile, over on the Guilty Gear side, after the announcements of the new content, the developers of the game came out to do another round of interviews telling everybody that they were chasing the global audience and weren't concerned with what older fans were thinking. This time highlighting the opening of the American branch as the game was created, and the general focus of Strive's direction being on them destroying what they built with Guilty Gear Xrd while framing it as a failure. Their words, not mine. As these new comments surfaced, fans new and old once again began to reconsider the motivations behind the radical adjustments to the series' gameplay and the handful of characters that received conflicting or questionable changes. Most importantly, Bridget, whose return 2 years ago came with a series of similar interviews that pushed a retcon that claimed him to be a trans woman, which has led to him being in the spotlight nearly every time the game receives new content, or if it's just a random Friday. The situation escalated to the point where prominent player Julian Harris jumped up to defend the game the only way he knew how, by lashing out at random commenters and challenging them to sets of 1st to 10. This only added fuel to the fire when it was pointed out that the alternate account he used to practice Bridget was named Femboy Erasure, an often mocked but very real and self-explanatory phenomenon often pushed by the same activists currently murdering escapism and seeking to control the lives of others. After receiving more pushback than he was expecting when he began directly harassing feminine men and their advocates, he was quick to call for an end to people questioning him, claiming that all the comments on the matter were just jokes and begging for people to stop messaging him. In 2022, I commented on how Bridget and the potential changes made to him would hang around both him and the Guilty Gear series like a stain regardless of any official stance. While that has been proven to be a correct assessment, with every single character since his release having rabid members of the fanbase attributing ill-fitting sexualities and identities to them, I couldn't possibly imagine the emboldening of online activists, who have used the momentum of this pandering move to latch onto any character across multiple mediums, and sometimes real people, that even remotely lines up with their headcanons, beliefs, and demands, Preacha being just one of many in a long list of those latched onto in a similar manner, a trend that is likely to continue for a while, especially within the fighting game community and genre. In other fighting game news, throughout the month, fighting game modders reported takedowns on videos featuring and advertising mods for Tekken 8, with a primary focus on mod developers and their previews. This new wave of attacks is a continuation and escalation of similar moves from Namco that began when they revealed and later debuted their in-game store, which features many returning costumes that had been ported over from previous titles, and also follows a new growing negative stance on game modifications from other fighting game developers, most notably Capcom with Street Fighter VI, and most recently Koei Tecmo with Dead or Alive 6. While many have praised Tekken 8 for its launch gameplay and general presentation, fans have scrutinized its customization, with a smaller amount of options and less ways to use them compared to previous games, extending all the way through to limited color options, which faced similar pushback when players found a way to select normally inaccessible colors, something that was quickly patched out. With a growing online shop and new Battle Pass system, one can only imagine how this will continue as more legacy content is revealed by Namco, and as fighting games grow their post-launch support, with additional companies jumping in on chipping away at the open modding scene. Another rough report in a series of rough reports for Blizzard and the Overwatch 2 team as they both continue to spiral further in their 8-year downward trend, with sources claiming the long-awaited PvE content has been cancelled. The content, originally used to justify the otherwise unnecessary sequel to Overwatch 1, has seen multiple revisions, delays, and shrinking of scope since its announcement as a core component of Overwatch 2. For anyone not paying attention, as a friendly reminder, Overwatch 1 was sunset and made unavailable to play in 2022, forcing players to move to Overwatch 2 after they were initially meant to run concurrently. One of the main justifications for this was an expansive PvE mode, advertised as a fully playable story campaign, complete with character skill trees and customization. As time passed after the release with no sign of the marquee mode, two separate ventures were shown in its stead. The Invasion Bundle, a $15 prologue cobbled together from whatever was left after development, and the Hero missions that would have focused on replayability and a talent system that was planned as early as Overwatch 1. Both the missions and the systems were cancelled last year. Shortly after the report hit, new Damage Hero Venture received her first official in-game reveal, and at the end of the month she was temporarily made playable for a brief test period. She and a few other heroes were revealed much earlier at BlizzCon 2023. At that time, many claimed that the reveal was to distract from the various continued controversies Blizzard had found themselves in, and now many are claiming the same, with Venture's sudden reveal and playability coinciding with the new cancellation reports making the rounds. Whether that's true or not, another issue made itself known as Venture became playable. Right from her reveal months ago, a writer from the team came out to express that Venture was non-binary, which led to multiple conflicts in-game and out as players who don't really see that as a thing began fighting with content creators who were preemptively attacking, banning, and reporting players who don't respect her pronouns, surprising everyone that there were enough players left to make such a conflict widespread. It remains to be seen if the reports around the cancellation are completely true, although even if it were released, it will be missing many expected features based on official cuts and developer comments so far, which paint an uncertain picture. But until official clarification, there's no way to know for sure. As for Venture, she will release into the game proper on April 16th. Throughout the month, the topic of fan service was brought to the forefront of ongoing discussion within the industry, as hotly anticipated game Stellar Blade neared release, and a demo was made available. Since then, the industry media and various virtue signaling content creators, now confronted with a game that people had played and enjoyed, resorted to the only tactic they had left: attacking any supporter of the game as well as the devs themselves, slandering them as weird basement-dwelling virginal freaks who had never seen a real woman before, despite the fact that the main character Eve has a very real model that was scanned in and used for her creation. The conflict had highlighted a questionable industry trend that had been building up over 2 console generations but had gone under the radar due to social stigma, that being the fact that attractive and appealing women were becoming rarer in Western releases, even in games that featured attractive models scanned in and used as a base for the characters. As if on cue, Microsoft decided to publish what's described as a product inclusion action, titled Help Customers Feel Seen. The somewhat short but dense document covered and rehashed the last 10 years of forced diversity that has been slowly throttling the industry and the creativity in it. Citing a small group of loaded studies, it claimed that upward of an outrageous 60% of players didn't play games specifically because they felt games weren't made for them, while also claiming that over 50% of players felt that diversity in storytelling should be a priority. Tucked in there was a bullet point telling developers to consider how their female characters were presented, with a focus on beauty standards such as appropriate clothing and exaggerated body proportions. Following these dubious statistics and suggestions were recommendations on how to change your game in consideration of them. The ideas and strategies presented here represent just a small portion of pressure exerted against developers in all spaces, and one has to wonder exactly what the goal here is from Microsoft, a company that already has an uphill battle ahead of them after years of missteps they still fully haven't recovered from, but is for some reason choosing to pick fights against creative expression. In the meantime, one thing is clear: consumers are noticing these practices more and more, and the grip is struggling to hold. It may be a while yet before interested parties of this nature are gone, but the pushback is there, and it is growing, as more people wake up to shady investments, and as more developers set out on their own, away from cultural malefactors. And now, some smaller stories from throughout the month. After a long wait, Final Fantasy XIV came to Xbox platforms, and not long after, players reported Xbox account bans after what appears to be the service's overly harsh word filter catching players using the phrase "free company," the term Final Fantasy XIV uses for their large player groups, similar to guilds or clans. This would appear to be the result of triggering an automated system on the lookout for phrases and terms related to prostitution, but it has not been confirmed, and at this time there's been no official word on the matter, and no blanket recourse given by Microsoft to those affected, who are reporting bans that will last as long as 2 months. Sony has paused its production of PlayStation VR2 headsets, with insiders claiming a backlog of unsold units as the reason. The news follows slow sales that have only gotten more sluggish as the larger virtual reality market, and Sony's initiative in it, has failed to produce enough killer apps to attract a sustainable audience, relying heavily on experiments and ports of existing games. Only time will tell if this gimmick will ever catch on in a meaningful way. In the meantime, it will likely remain in the realm of hopeful hobbyists. And that does it for this episode of the Pre-Game Network News Hole. If you encounter anything you think we'd find interesting throughout the following weeks, send it our way. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.